Okay, ready? Okay, hello everyone. So before we begin, to ensure a smoother management of the Zoom sessions, please log into your Zoom waiting room 15 minutes before the session begins. However, do take note that admission into the session will only begin at 8. Okay, so hello everyone and welcome to our online Buddhism course. So it's wonderful to see participants from all over the world, Asia and America. So we truly appreciate your presence and commitment to this journey. So we are delighted to have Dr. Venerable Yumin, who has a special gift for taking Buddha's timeless teachings and making them practical and relevant for our daily lives. So whether you're new to Buddhism or you have been practicing for many years, Dr. Yumin's insights will surely help to deepen your understanding and support your everyday mindfulness. So please join me in warmly welcoming Dr. Venerable Yumin.
Okay, thanks, Sharon. Thank you, our team members who are
Welcome back,
supportive.
everyone.
Have been so supportive.
Just before we begin, as usual, I'd like us to come back to where we are. We are sitting on a chair. Try to feel your feet touching comfortably on the ground. Feel our body sitting comfortably on the chair. Move our shoulders a little bit. Adjust our body posture. After a long day of work, we usually accumulate a lot of tiredness, soreness. We bear a lot of duties. We have so much responsibility. So for the next 90 minutes, I'd like to invite everyone to sit together, to share our wisdom, to enjoy our companionship, and together we learn something that we are familiar with, something new, something might be inspiring too. So come back to where we are, to our focus, to our breathing. Slowly take in a deep breath. When you breathe out, feel your body come back to its natural posture, relaxed and comfortable. Take one more deep breath, breathing in. Breathe out. One more last time, breathe in. Breathe out. All right. Welcome back, everyone. Now I'm back in New York. So for about one full month of chaotic travel to Japan, I was in Kyoto doing my PhD thesis defense. And then when it's done, I went to Taiwan for 4 days there were 2 days of seminars and talk. So I was in Taipei, but I just spent 4 days in Taipei. And then I went back to Kyoto for another week. And then I was attending a lecture given by my professor. Well, one-on-one, because he wanted to really correct my thesis. So that was another experience. Full day. We started at 10 in the morning and usually finished at 6. I was just listening, absorbing all the knowledge and wisdom for 8 hours a day. It was good. And then the final week, very much to my surprise, I got the opportunity to present my thesis at the university in Tokyo. So there was another extra of traveling. So because of the thesis presentation, I missed last week's class. I really want to apologize for that, for the last minute notice. So let's see how we move on. we might have a time to cover up for that week. And if time seems impossible, then, but I will try to make our class to be as comprehensible, as complete as possible. Okay, so welcome back, and let's begin. And today we are still talking about how Buddhism, when it first introduced into China, and how it kind of interacted with the local religions, especially the Chinese belief. So today we're going to talk a little bit about Han religions at that time, especially when Buddhism started to spread in China in the 1st or 2nd century in the Common Era. So what I call here Han religions, it actually means, to my surprise, we forgot to make the homage to the Buddha. So let's do it now. You see, 1 week of absence really changed a lot of things. Okay, I'd like you to, before we go on to details, I'd like you to join me by joining your palms together. Let's recite the name of a Supreme Teacher. Homage to the Supreme Teacher, Shakyamuni Buddha. Homage to our Supreme Teacher, Shakyamuni Buddha. Homage to the Supreme Teacher, Shakyamuni Buddha. Thank you very much for paying attention. So you can really sense that I'm still a little bit in my jet lag mood. So remind me, Sharon, if you see me doze off in the middle, it's normal. Okay, in general, the Chinese traditional religions, when they meet Buddhism, we're talking about the 3 types of religions in China that exist together at the same time in the 1st, 2nd century. First is Confucianism, right? Then we have Taoism, of course, Buddhism. But we all know that for Confucianism and Taoism, they are the 2 Chinese traditions that has been existed long before Buddhism arrived in China. So they were the general belief for most Chinese people, and they interact with everything in daily life, daily activities, how we live our life, what are the moral, ethical codes, how we run the country, and how the emperor rule the country. All of these actually are very much influenced by Confucianism and the idea of Taoism. So you can imagine that when Buddhism first came in as a foreign religion, what kind of impact it would have to the local people. What would they feel? What would they see? Something that has a complete different cultural background, philosophies, way of life, and even code of ethics. So in today's, we're going to spend about probably 80 minutes to talk a little bit about how these 3 interact with each other and how we should understand Buddhism from especially Chinese Buddhism, looking at what we understand about Chinese Buddhism now is really a blend, like integration of all 3 religions that has been so familiar to Chinese people. So just imagine this, right? This is, I remember I read an article before. It mentioned about, they give a metaphor. They say that, in Tang Dynasty, there was a famous saying about a traveler who came to a crossroads, right? So in front of this traveler, there are 3 paths open to him or her. So each path leads to a different place. On the first path, he saw a guy, it's an old wise guy. He's Confucius, Kongzi, right? And then he reminded the traveler that, you have your duty to your parents, your ruler, and your society. Right? So my advice to you is live responsibly. Right? And then he said that for harmony in a family and order in a state begin with self-cultivation. So Confucius is trying to teach this guy that, this is the path that you should follow. Live responsibly. And on the next path, which is in front of this traveler, is a Taoist stage. So he has a flowing robes, with a gentle smile, walking slowly among the pine trees, who to give you a kind of scenery. And then he tells the traveler, flow with nature. That's what he said. Preserve your body, live long, keep your heart light like the breeze. Right? This is the advice given by the sage of the Taoists. And on a third path stands a Buddhist monk. So he was sitting quietly under a tree and a bowl by his side. And the monk told the traveler that look within, look in your heart, right? Life is suffering and impermanent. And by purifying your mind, you can transcend birth and death. So what happened to this traveler was he was standing there, amazed, looking at three paths, three different teachers, three voices, talking about responsibility, talking about the nature of life, the nature itself, talking about value, and talking about human final, ultimate destination. So this metaphor actually tells a very good story about a Chinese religion, right? So the goal of today's talk is about, we are not talking about which one to choose and which one is better than another, but how these three teachings from Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism actually come together and shape the Chinese understanding of life and death. Okay? Of course, if you come from different culture, this is also a good way to understand that if you're coming from a background of, let's say, Christianity, or Jewish community, actually it's the same, right? No religion, all religions is somehow they have, when they come to interact with a new culture, it always blend in local cultures and make the religion belief become alive and like an organic organism. Like it's really organic. So it lives, it transforms, it changes, it evolves. So this is what we're trying to do today. The story of Chinese religion is about the story of how these three mingles and then they become what we know today as when we practice Chinese Buddhism. Okay, so the Chinese religion includes these three. So they focus on analysis of human life, its nature, its character, its value, and idea how to transcend life and death. So these three things come together and make us how to understand religion. Okay. So they share the similarities, which is they always focus on the analysis of human life. Right, so I think this is a very interesting chart. The first thing is we are born, right, on the kind of like 10 o'clock. Look at 10 o'clock, right, on your left hand side. You are born, you start school, you make friends, and then you graduate, you get a job, we fall in love, we get married, have a baby. Well, hopefully not divorce. And we emigrate, well, just an example, right? Immigrate to a new city, and then working for 40 years, and then retire, make a will, and then we die. All right, this is a life cycle, right? It's common to all human experience. Some of us might have more exciting one. Some of us following this path quite closely. So it reminded me of how I was raised in my more or less a traditional Chinese family. I was actually told by my parents since I was a very young kid that, at the age of 15, 16, 17, after you finish high school, you are going to study abroad. My dad always told me that you have to go to some Western countries to get education. And after you finish education, you get a good job. And after a few years of experience, you come back and help me in my business. And then you have family, and then you must give me some grandchild, some grandchildren, and then you live a good life, you prepare for your, you prepare, you raise your child, you take care of us, and then live a good life. So there was a path that was actually planted in my mind, and I was following that quite strictly. I was really looking forward to start my life as I was told when I was young, before I was ordained. Right? So ordination for me is something. So for me, before I learned Buddhism, my way of thinking was very, I would say, very Confucianism and a little bit of Taoism. Confucianism means that I have responsibility to my family, to my society. I have like different relationship with family members and friends. There are a lot of like unspeakable kind of rules, responsibility that you follow and you carry. I was following quite tightly with that with that route was kind of designed for me. And then I met Buddhism. I thought that, well, there's another possibility, another path I could choose. So then I went on to a different path until to become who I am today. So whatever it is, think about how we have lived until now, which idea, which philosophy actually shape our understanding of our world, which idea that we follow that we think is the truth of the universe. I think any one of us, we have different ways, we have different ideas about how we should live our life. So even the same for Buddhism, we might, most of us might be Buddhists here, but your understanding of the universe, your understanding of the reality might be different from mine. So it's very important, as told by the Buddha, to really open up. We have open mind to listen to what other people have to say and to share our stories. And by integrating more elements from experience from different culture, different religions, we tend to get wiser, right? And we have more choices in our what we so call our life cycle, right? So I'm sure at some point in my life, all of us might have made some decision, like we are standing in a crossroad, and then we might make a decision, and then we completely change our path of life. So that is why we need a spiritual practice. No matter where we are, no matter what we chose, we are always going to the same goal. That is, in Buddhism, that is to eliminate all our suffering for ourselves and for others. So this is our human life cycle, which is related to what our belief systems are and how we are dealing with them. All right, philosophy of life. Go back to Confucianism. It teaches about proper human behavior, morality, and social responsibilities. Right. The time when Confucius was alive, the whole culture in the ancient China was very chaotic. So we call Li. One term we call the Li. Li is like how the manner and how the rightness, which you call it, the way of life was actually breaking down. So Confucius' main goal is to really re-establish the more a more righteous way of life for most people, especially for the emperors, for other kings and emperors that were in ancient China who were like so eager to fight each other. So the main goal is the Confucius try to teach people how to behave properly as a human being. How do we relate ourselves to other people in a good moral way? And Taoism is more about teaching us what is natural, and spontaneous. And when Buddhism came, it teaches about personal moral cultivation with an aim to achieve enlightenment. These three paths seem to have different emphasis, right? But are they really different? Well, let's see. It's actually not so much different. They actually complement each other. So during the Song Dynasty, in about year 960 to 1200 or so. So these three religions in China, they became syncretized, right? I mean, they kind of blend together, become one belief system that is so unique to the Chinese people. Confucianism, right? So we understand, look, think about it. If we understand Chinese culture, we know that when we talk about Confucianism, we talk about the cultivation of good human being, right? How to behave, how to relate to our parents, how to take your responsibility. If when you are a husband, when you are a wife, when you are a children, when you are a child to someone else, a teacher, for example, how we relate to each other. Though this is emphasized by Confucius, and Taoism is about, nowadays in modern time, we think about Taoism more about longevity, how to have a healthy body, like Tai Chi, Qigong, all this stuff. So this is, of course, this is more like a biased understanding of Taoism. Taoism is more on that. Well, Taoism is more about the way of life, the way of nature. But because the way that it helps us to gain longevity, it becomes so prominent that people tend to take Taoism, just Tai Chi and Kung Fu, right? And Buddhism, of course, for the cultivation of mind. So we understand that for Chinese culture and Chinese Buddhism, these three components, they come together and they complement each other. Right? How they complement each other? Just look around in Buddhist temple around you. Right? Go to any Buddhist temple. Whether you're in New York, you're in Singapore, you're in Malaysia, in Hong Kong, you're in Taiwan. I can guarantee you that of most of the activities that we have in the temples, we will have, of course, Buddhist classes, Buddhist rituals, ceremonies, and most often, if in a community, we have Tai Chi, right? We have Qigong, and then we have the Chinese doctors who come to Ba Mai, right? To check the pulse of your body and to tell how your body works. And then Confucianism, of course, we also have classes, especially when I was in Taiwan, there were many classes for young kids and young adults. They teach not pure Buddhism, but not just Buddhism, but also the theory of, they teach Lunyu. Lunyu is some of the teachings, the main teachings found in Confucianism. So these three components complement each other, and they are not actually rivalry to each other. All right. Okay. Just for example, even our daily life, I remember I was talking to one primary school teacher. I was asking her that, well, how do you actually understand, that Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism kind of in our culture, but how do you understand them? Can we actually differentiate which element play what role in our daily life? So let's take example for the teacher, right? So she told me that at school, the idea from Confucianism guides her how she should interact with the colleagues at school and the students, right? So she learned that she had to respect the parents, care for the children, and she had to teach the student with a sense of duty and morality to the society. Right. So this is her way of fulfilling the human responsibilities by her understanding from the teachings of Confucius. And how about Taoist? I was asking her, does Taoist have any impact on your life? She said, yeah, sure. Well, after I get off work, I need some me time, I need some personal balance. So I would go for a walk in the nature. And she also practiced Tai Chi. Right. Sometimes she would just enjoy sitting quietly by the river, by the seaside. So she learned to follow what is natural, right? And not force things against the flow of her life. So this kind of way of thinking is more Taoist than anything else, right? And of course, when it comes to Buddhism, Buddhism has a great impact in her life. She practiced mindfulness, and she chant the name, she chant Amitabha, right? The name of Amitabha, and she practiced mindfulness, Sometimes she reflects on her actions, remind herself that everything is impermanent. So she developed compassion and wisdom through the practice of Buddhism. So this is like a very practical daily life of our culture, but unconsciously we are actually applying different, I would say, different philosophies or principles from all three religions that we are so familiar with in our Chinese culture. Right, so this is how it is. The three complement each other. So this is the school motto that she sent me. It said in her school, these are the 1, 2, 3. These are 8 words motto that is for the student. I mean for the school. We have the 忠孝仁爱礼义廉耻, right? Loyalty, filial piety, humanity, love, courtesy, righteousness, integrity, and sense of shame. So these are like the 8 most important values that is taught by Confucian. But you say, oh, is it really just Confucian? You know, when we talk about Buddhism, we really mention about the same thing when we talk about how to be more compassionate to others, how to have wisdom. So the guidelines, even though we don't use the same vocabulary, but the idea is very similar. Because of this similarity in Buddhism and the Chinese traditional religions, especially Confucianism, so we're going to look about 2 aspects, right? The similarities of the Chinese traditional religion and Buddhism. The first is the importance of human life, right? This is the first part. And the second part is the emphasis on self-cultivation. How these 2 religions kind of share similarities of these 2 aspects. So this painting is, I think it's quite famous. Is the happiness like gathering of 3. Is a monk, right? A Buddhist monk, a Taoist monk, and a Confucian scholar. They were standing together happily. They were chatting. They're having fun. So this just shows that how these 2 religions are really integrated and being so impactful from ancient China. All right, let's talk about Confucianism first. Confucianism, of course, first they value human life, right? They focus on the analysis of human life with an aim to achieve happiness, right? Be a good human and you achieve happiness. That's the main goal of the teaching of Confucius. And of course, Confucius really think that there's no place for supernatural power, such as a god or gods, I mean in plural terms, who create and control our life, the human. Right? So these are the basic belief system which is shared by Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism. Right? And as a passage in the Xunzi, he was a Confucian philosopher. He said that, okay, I will read from Chinese first. 水火有气而无声，草木有声而无知，禽兽有知而无义，人有气有声有知，义且有义，故就为天下贵也。It talks about what is a human life, right? So water and fire, they talk about first 2 things. The water and fire have the vital energy. Kind of vital energy, like, well, it has an energy, right? It has kind of like something that moves, can transform, but it doesn't grow, right? Water and fire, it seems alive, it seems to have energy, but it doesn't grow. Okay, first part. And second part is vegetation. How about vegetation? You know, vegetation can grow, all right, but it doesn't have awareness. Okay, this is how we understand it. How about animals? Animals have awareness, right, but they don't have the understanding of righteousness. Like yi, righteousness, what is morally correct and what is immoral. So animal don't have this kind of ability to differentiate what is right from wrong. So this is the meaning about human, right? Human, we have a vital energy, right? We transform, we live, we grow, we have the awareness, and we know about what is right, what is wrong. So Xunzi said the same thing as a Confucian philosopher. He said that human is the most valuable under heaven. So human life is the most valuable of all living creatures under heaven. So about the vegetation that grow, I remember when I first, well, that was a long time ago, more than 20 years ago. I was asking this question to my first monastic teacher. His name is Yang Ten. I remember one day I was walking in a park with him. I said that, well, I know that, after I became a Buddhist, I voluntarily became a vegetarian. I stopped eating meat. And I feel like, this is because I don't want to, it's because of act of kindness. We don't want to cause harm to living creatures, to animals, to cause them suffer. But when I look at the tree, when I look at vegetation, I had the question like, how do we know that vegetation doesn't feel pain? When you pick, when you really pluck a grass from the ground, when you really cut down a tree, do they feel pain? Right? I don't know. I tried thinking it from the scientific point of view. Like, how are we human so sure that vegetation or a tree doesn't have any emotions, doesn't have any feelings, or just something that for us to use, right? But he was like, of course, my teacher, he was really wise. He said, look at me, he said that, no, you mean, no, well, my name wasn't Yumin, but anyway. He said, no, vegetation doesn't have feelings. It's clearly stated in our scripture. So we can take them, we can consume them, because what is it? They can grow, they have life force, but they don't have awareness. Awareness is something that's so crucial to animals, well, including human. So because they don't have awareness. Well, I mean, from the spiritual point of view, this is what I believe to be true. But if we follow the scientific research nowadays, sometimes we find it quite interesting to understand that, okay, there was this research done by a group of scientists, I think in Africa. What they did was, in the same species of tree, let's say they one tree over here and then the other tree like few meters away. What they did was they covered the first tree with a dome, like a kind of envelope, so that the tree didn't have the opportunity to breathe the air, right? They kind of like put it in a cover. What happened was, and then from the tree few meters away, they also cover it with a roof, and then they pump in some gas with color. So it naturally the plant will kind of consume the oxygen from the air. At the same time, also take in the kind of mixture of the what we call it, the chemical substance. So what happened after a while, right? The tree that was actually suffocating. They found the same element, the same chemical element, they were transformed from a tree few meters away. So it just shows that the tree was helping the suffocating tree to breathe. I think this is a very interesting phenomenon. So, and then they try to do the same experiment with different species of tree. They found that there was no connection. They said, trees are also quite picky who to help and who not to help. So, I mean, from understanding of this, it kind of gave me a new perspective of how we look at the nature, the environment, even though they don't have consciousness, right? But the way they maintain their balance and the way they kind of cooperate in the nature to protect the environment, they play a very, very important role. So that opens up my mind, and this really brings me a little bit closer to the teaching of Taoism that talks about, the nature is something for us to respect. Of course, Buddhism, we also mentioned that, but Taoist has a lot of emphasis on to maintain the balance of all the nature within human is very insignificant for the Taoists. Okay, so of course, when we come to spiritual practice, the importance of human life is always at priority. Okay, of course, for Buddhism, human life is the most important, no question, because there are 5. Depends on which text you're referring to. The earlier text say there are only 5 forms of life, and the later text say there are 6. There are gods, humans, animals, hungry ghosts, hell beings, asuras. Asuras is a kind of category that was added later in our sutra. Okay. Among these 6, right? We've gone through that before. Among these 6, actually, human rebirth is regarded as the most fortunate, but not superior. Okay, why is that so? Why is it fortunate but not superior? All right, human rebirth is fortunate, right? Because this is rare. Humans have the moral capacity for spiritual progress. We, only as human, we are able to do spiritual practice and improve our relationship with ourselves, with our community, with the nature. Only human has the capacity. Okay, but human rebirth is not superior. Right? Why? Because humans are not a special creation of nature. Right? We are not special from the others. The value of life, is not so special from other creation of nature. Even nature itself, human is usually, in today's biological terms, human is actually quite useless and harmful to the environment. Yeah, don't you think so? We are the one who consume the most resources on Earth. We are the one who create most pollution on Earth. We are the one who always take and never repay the Mother Earth. So to the nature, human is actually the toxic on the planet, right? So don't think that we are much more superior than other animals who contribute to the balance of the nature. And because in Buddhism we say that any sentient being, through karma, right, we can also be born as a human. But how to be born as a human in the Chinese sutra, in the Buddhist sutra, especially in the Samyutta Nikaya, there's one passage. It's called the Chikara Sutta. They say that the chance of a human birth is very rare. Why? It is less than a blind turtle, right? Imagining the big ocean, there's a blind turtle, blind, couldn't see, swimming randomly on the sea, and then in every 100 years, it will surface to take a breath. And that moment when a turtle surfaces to take a breath, just rightly, there's a wood on top of the surface on the sea level, and there's a small hole on a piece of wood, and a turtle head just went through the hole, just went through the hole and takes a breath. So let's just imagine what is the chance of this incident happening. So this is exactly what was described in the Chikara Sutta. It says that this is how precious a human birth is. It's like that turtle, every 100 years, poke his head out to the surface of the ocean and went through the hole of the wood, and voila, you got a human rebirth. So it tells us that we have to really appreciate when we are born as a human, take this opportunity to practice spiritually to improve ourselves. So this from a Buddhist point of view. Of course, Buddhism also says that moral and spiritual progress, right? Well, also spiritual decline if we don't practice, if we just being caught in our or greed, delusion, and anything that we really grab on, is really kind of decline. So it happens at human level. And they ask, no, but how about heavenly beings? They're enjoying their life. Isn't it a good place to go? But in Buddhism, actually, the Buddha or even Buddhism, we never kind of like look forward to be reborn as a heavenly being, as a god, as a like gods in the way that the Buddha term. Well, because all heavenly beings, even though they enjoy very good karma, but they lack the urgency to seek the Dharma. Right? I remember I was reading one Chinese text long time ago. It was saying that it was describing how was the life was in the heavenly in the heaven. He said that, you know, as a human, if you want to eat, we need to cook. We need to prepare ingredients, and then we need to know the way to cook, and then we need to put everything together, then we can enjoy a meal. But in heaven, you don't have to. Everything comes when you think about it. You say, oh, I want Kyoto matcha ice cream topped with some natural organic white whipped cream. Boom! It just appear in front of you. You know, the pure matcha grown in Kyoto with some whipped cream, which are organic. So this is by a thought in the mind that they can enjoy all the luxuries, all the things they can enjoy. So imagine if you're living in this kind of luxurious life. Do we still have the time? Do we still have any will to practice or improve spiritually? Right? So that's a problem. So in the Buddhist Sutra, it also mentions that even though you were born as a heavenly being, but the life will end one day as well. Maybe it's about after 1,000 years, maybe 10,000 years, maybe even shorter. So there are 5 signs when a god or heavenly being, they start dying. The first thing is their clothes become soiled. Right? Imagine when you're wearing a very beautiful clothes as a god, your clothes you never need to wash. You never need the laundry. You never need laundry to be done. You know, it's always clean by itself. But when we are reaching the final stage of your life as a human being, of a heavenly being, your clothes will become soiled. It has smell on it. It becomes dirty, right? And also that the flowers on our heads wither. I'm not sure if this is what our image about heavenly beings. Somehow they have garlands and flowers on their head, right? Very beautiful. So what happened is the flowers start to wither when their life comes to the end stage. And their body becomes dirty, you know, and smell, and their sweat. You know, there's sweat under the armpits. We know that, well, no, we know, but those the scripture tells us that heavenly being never sweat. But by the end stage, you do have sweat. And because of all these bodily changes, you know, makes them uncomfortable. So they are not happy anymore. Wherever they are, wherever they be, they know that time will come and they become anxious and they start to worry. So this is why in Buddhism, we never encourage practitioners to wish to be born as a heavenly being, but to try to maintain a human life, right? Because that's the reason is that we as human, we experience both joy and sorrow, right? This balance makes us understand and practice the Dharma, right? But if we are born in lower realms, so we'll be overwhelmed by suffering. We cannot focus on the Dharma, okay? There's one important understanding about animals is that, you know, if you look at one of those, if you look at one of those documentary, especially in Discovery channels or Animal Planets, you see that, you know, okay, for example, there's a lioness chasing after a deer, right? Or some buffaloes. Say, oh, that's terrible, you know. If you look at ordinarily we might see that, oh, the lioness is so poor lioness, you know, she is creating more karma in this life because of killing, because of causing suffering to other animals. But actually in Buddhist teaching, this is not the case. When you were born as an animal and your nature is to hunt, is to kill other animals for food to survive, you are actually exhausting your previous karma and you're actually not creating new karma. Why? Why is that so? Well, it is because animals don't have the free will to live a righteous, right? We mentioned just a few slides before. What is righteous? What is the right way to live? because for them it's to follow their instinct. They don't have, for the animals, for the hunters, for animals who hunt, they don't have the will to kill for fun, right? To kill just for pleasure, to cause suffering. What the thing is, I want to survive. If I want to survive, I need to eat. If I don't eat, I have to kill. I have to catch a smaller animal. So this way, this is how the karma works, right? If we don't have the intention, so it comes with intention. We don't have intention to perform certain acts. Usually, the action itself doesn't cause us a negative karma to be experienced in the future. So this is how it works, right? So this is why in Buddhism we always say that all actions always start with an intention. If the intention is good, of course you need to be also careful to be skillful. But the most important is always the intention. If the intention is, check your intention. Is this right? Then by all means, your action couldn't be wrong. But of course, sometimes when you're unskillful, we must say something that hurt other people's feeling. So that's why in Buddhism practice, we talk about compassion and wisdom. Compassion means that we have good intention. Oh, I want to help. I want to change this guy. I want to make him understand that he is doing something wrong. But are you wise enough to use the right word, to find the right time, the right situation, to say to that person that you can make him change? So always compassion and wisdom comes together as a pair, right? But intention, the first thing that why you want to do this action, that counts the most. Anyway, so all these link to our understanding of the most fundamental teaching of Buddhism, which is compassion and wisdom. So as a human, we are able to practice compassion and wisdom, right? Because we experience both joy and sorrow. And compared to animals, humans are very fortunate. And we have moral sense and spiritual potential for real growth. So that is, as a human, right? All Buddhas appear in the human world, right? It is not attained as gods in heavens. So for example, we have Bodhisattva Maitreya, who will be born as a future Buddha, if you remember. He will attain Buddhahood in the human world, and now he is waiting and in the Tusita heaven to descend to the earth. In a long time from now, don't put in your calendar. I think you will be, this life you will never be able to see him, right? So soon. So keep waiting. So Buddhism always emphasizes that if you want to practice, if you want to achieve Buddhahood, it is always, until the sixth realm, it is always in the human world that help us achieve Buddhahood. Of course, when you talk about the Pure Land Buddhism, that is a later development that happened. Yes, we can reborn in the Pure Land, which was created by Buddha Amitabha, one of the Pure Lands. Then there they create you enough good environment that we can practice. Of course, that is another development of Buddhism as well. But anyway, human rebirth is the most precious in Buddhism as well. So these are the similarities between Confucianism and Buddhism. Human life is the most precious, right? And the second part, which is that we share the same value, is about self-cultivation. What is self-cultivation? Right? Confucian and Buddhism, we value human life, morality, spiritual life. So both also emphasize self-cultivation for moral perfection, for spiritual awakening, and to achieve the ideal life. Right? So this talk about the cultivation of the mind and self-control. So how does that work for Confucianism? Okay, Confucianism, right? One of the books that is very important, it's called 大学, right? So he say that an ideal Confucian, this is the way that they practice spiritually. First, cultivate the person, 修身, starting from oneself, body and mind, right? 修身, and then regulate his family or her family. It means take care of the family, manage well, and then govern the states. I mean, in terms of, so the circle kind of growing from oneself to family, to the country, and then to the whole world. So finally, to illustrate the virtue throughout the kingdom. So it's 修身齐家治国平天下. These are the 4 levels of cultivation in Confucius. This is quite different from Chinese Buddhism, but I remember when I was in primary school or even to secondary school, these were the ideas that I kind of like, I get in touch with these ideas very often. I remember in my classroom, there was 2 huge banner on one of the side or one side of the wall. These are the words: 修身齐家治国平天下. At that time, I never knew, it was like, what is Confucius? I never had this idea. But now when I think back, the idea of Confucianism is actually so much like so much involved in our education, in our daily life, and these ideas are everywhere. Take care of yourself spiritually, take care of yourself, like even physical body, and then take care of family, and then think about even bigger. So this is a little bit like also when we practice a metta. Remember when we do the metta practice, we always start from sending the good will, kindness to ourselves. Oh, may I be safe. May I be free from mental suffering. May I be free from physical suffering. And then may I be at ease and at peace. And then we move on to someone that we have high respect, and then move on to someone closer to us, and then move on to strangers, or the people we hate, and then to everyone around without any discrimination. So I think that the spirit behind this practice of going from oneself to a bigger self, to the whole world, so the same idea also occurs in Confucianism. Starting from oneself, take care of yourself, take care of your family, take care of the country, and then spread your ideas and help to create peace to the world. Right. So this is for Confucianism. Right. So the key lesson in this is like, in order for big changes to happen, they always begin with small steps in oneself. Right. So when a person cultivates sincerity and knowledge, so it ripples, growing from oneself, and then it kind of expands outward from family to community to the whole world. I think that these ideas is also very much entangled in Buddhist practice, because in Buddhist practice you always talk about take care of yourself, take care of what you were thinking, take care of your emotion, take care of your mind, and then try to bring changes to yourself first before we influence other people. Same idea here for Confucianism and Buddhism. Okay, of course, for Buddhism, we are more specific. We talk about the areas of training is the mind, the body, and the speech, right? So what is the body and speech? Body and speech means that we observe the precepts that is really clearly written. You got the 5 precepts, such as there are some things that we should avoid as bodily actions: killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, and then we have verbal action to avoid: lying, slander, harsh words, thoughtless talk. So these are very specifically written, and these are the remedies given in the 5 precepts to help us to cultivate the body and speech. Right? And talk about the mind. What is the mind? Right? How to cultivate? We cultivate by purifying the mind, by removing unwholesome thoughts. We know that at every moment we have thoughts arising in our mind. It could be wholesome, it could be unwholesome, it could be something neutral. Right? So purifying the mind is not very complicated. It's always be aware that if a negative and unwholesome thought arises, we notice it, we acknowledge we have these thoughts, accept it, and say, oh, yeah, I do have anger, I do have, once a while, I do have the feeling of taking a little bit of revenge on someone who hurt us. Acknowledge that we are human, we have this, and then, okay, I see that emotion arise, I notice it, and then I let it go. Kind of, okay, you are there, I'm here, I'm not going to be overwhelmed by you. So this process is actually called purifying the mind. Right? Very basic, but very hard to do. We have to keep doing it again, and again. Right? And the next thing is to develop good and positive thoughts. This is called a cultivation of mind. Because we know that at any moment you can only have one thought. One thought and then replaced by the other, and then replaced by the other. If you are not checking, the thought will just keep like in every instant. There are like, I think with one snap of a finger, there are like about, if I'm not mistaken, about 60 thoughts that just gone. This is how quick our mind can trick us. So imagine if we don't check, if we don't practice, we are just carried away by the thoughts without even knowing that happening. So first, to acknowledge, to know unwholesome thoughts. The second is replace the unwholesome one with a wholesome one, right? Because only that we have a purified mind, we can clearly see ourselves and the world as they truly are. So these are fundamentals of cultivation of mind in Buddhist practice. So we can see that, right, from Confucianism, it talks about cultivate the person, family, states, and, well, the world. But in Buddhism, the steps are very practical and it's very precise and it's very easy to follow. So I would say that in this way, the two philosophical or two religious systems actually complement each other. Right? So there's no conflict of interest. It's just that how we apply them from the lens of a Confucianist, like Confucius background, which is so much integrated in the Chinese culture. So not to worry. When we start studying Buddhism, we'll find a lot of similarities. We'll find a lot of familiarities in Buddhism and Confucianism. Right, so what are the differences? We talk about the similarities between these two systems. There are also differences, we should be aware of. First is the human status in a society, how the Confucius said about human status and how Buddhism view it, and also how we see our physical body, how we should deal with it, right? Okay, so this picture is an interesting comparison. It compares the Chinese class system with Indian caste system. We know that in the Chinese patriarchal, the traditional patriarchal system, we always have the top. We only have the fatherly figure, and then we are as the husband, and then as a son. So these like the levels of the layers of the Chinese class. Of course, when we talk about politics, we have the rulers, and then we have below the ruler, we have all different kind of duties carried out by normal people. And this is different in India. India, we have a caste system too. We mentioned before, we have the Brahmin, we have the Kshatriya, we have Vaishya, we have Sudra, and then we have the untouchable. So this forms a triangle of the Indian caste system. So both Indian and Chinese, traditionally, we have very strong class system, which is very hierarchical. Right? The top in a pyramid is always the rulers, always have the most influence, power, and the bottom, they always have to contribute, and their needs are always ignored. So these are the caste system traditionally. So what does Confucius teach us about it, and how Buddhism is different from Confucianism in this way? First, Confucianism, it emphasizes hierarchical relationship in society. For example, king with the ministers, fathers and sons, right? So one of the great, grand students of Confucius is Mencius. Well, much later, he grouped this into 5 relationships, we call it Wulun, like the 5 relationships. First is between the father and son, right? Father and son is about affection and love. And then we have the sovereign and minister, right? It emphasizes on righteousness and duty. And then talk about husband and wife, it's just about attention to proper roles. And then the elder and the younger, 长幼有序, is a proper order and respect. And friends, right? Which is fidelity and trust. So this 5 relationship is very much being emphasized in the Confucius system. So if you are Chinese, think about it. How these 5 relationship actually influence our belief system, right? I'm sure we all have this experience. When I was young, my father's words is always, was always, the rule, right? My mom was always very kind to my father. Whatever my father said, whatever it is, we follow, right? And then also my relationship with my father, I know that there are certain manner I follow, even though I'm already an ordained monk now. So when I see my father, the relationship, I can tell that in my belief system, I still follow this kind of relationship quite well. How I should talk to my parents, how we should behave, even in Chinese New Year, right? When I was young, I received ang pao, the red envelope from them. Now, after I grew up, I give them the ang pao. For many years already, I still give them, even though the amount for them is not important, but it's a gesture itself that to show, this is the relationship in the family. Children, we repay the kindness of the parents by this physical act, by this act that can be measured, can be felt, and can be seen, right? This system is so much entangled in the Chinese culture that, it's everywhere, right? Look at it, it's like husband and wife, our duty, right? There's certain role you play. Of course, in modern times, it's much more even between husband and wife, but somehow deep in our heart, we still know that, there are still certain roles that a father can play better. There's still certain role that a mother or a wife plays better, right? Especially when I was in Japan, I was always amazed by how this system was so much influential in their daily life. In Japan, like the wife is always playing. Whenever I go to visit my friend, if he's married, the wife always take care of everything at home. When I go visit them, the man, my friend, the guy just took me in, and then we'll be sitting, and then the wife will start bringing us like drinks and preparing the food. And after we finish, when I wanted to go to the kitchen to help washing the dishes, it's not allowed in Japan. For them, it is something that is very it's something is rude to, if you see. I asked my friend before, right? When we're doing a class gathering, we have boys and girls. So at the end of the gathering, I wanted to help washing dishes, but the lady just chased me out. No man, no man in the kitchen. So for the understanding is, this is not your job. You do your duty as you were told. This is accepted in the society. Male do the kind of social interaction with other people, and a female will be more like supporting behind all this event. So these ideas, especially when I was in Japan, so much influenced by the Confucianism, and they still carry on today. Of course, there are many exceptions as well, but for my experience, it is so overwhelmingly influential in Japan. Of course, look at Chinese culture. We have the experience. Among friends, we talk about fidelity and trust. If you ask any of your friends here, what do you value most among your friendship? Trust always come up top. Trust, I need to trust them. I'm not going to use them when I need. So these are the ways that have good and strong relationship in a society. And I find this in Japanese, but you know, I find drawing really nice and cute. They talk about the rulers and the ministers, and then the father and the son, and then you know, in the family, the elder and the younger, and they talk about between friends, and talk about how a couple should respect each other, have different roles, and this the system that maintain the stability of the society. This is one of the strongest point of Confucianism, the family system, the society system. Right. Okay. So how about Buddhism? Human status in a society. Buddhism. In one Buddhist scripture, it says that just as the great rivers, the Ganga, the Yamuna, the Achiravati, the Sarabu, and the Mahi, you know, they all entering the mighty ocean, lose their former names and identities and are termed simply ocean. Right? Even so, these four castes, right? The Brahmins, the kings, the common people, and slaves, they going forth from the world into the homeless life, right? Into the discipline of Dhamma, proclaimed by the Buddha, lose their former names and lineages and are reckoned simply recluses, sons of the Sakyas. So it talks about in India, there are four caste systems. When you are born into any of the caste system, you are there. You are stuck for your entire life, even for your future life. You know, they believe that you're always reborn in the same caste again and again. They say that if you take the renunciation, you know, if you become a monastic, your identity, right, your status in a society, you leave behind, and then you become equal with anyone else. And for Buddhism, you are called the sons of the Sakyas. Sakya is the last name, the family name of Shakya Muni Buddha. So this is why in a Chinese culture, when you refer my name, I'm called Shi You Min. Right? Shi is a Sakya. They take the first sound of Sa. Yeah, Sakya actually we translated as Shi Jia. Right? But we take Shi as our family name. So I'm already called the son of the Sakya. So this is how our name comes. So hence, within the Buddhist community, all people are treated equal. And this is a fundamental teachings and belief of the Buddha. Is equal, right? It's against the caste system. And even in the karma as well, right? All people are equal in facing the karma, right? Our birth doesn't matter if you're born rich or if you're born as a slave. It doesn't matter in the ancient time. The Buddha say that birth depends on your own deeds in your previous life, right? Not on caste or social status. Right? You're not born as a king because you were the king before, or you're not born as a Brahmin because you were the Brahmin before. You were born as a king because you have good karma. You have accumulated a lot of merits. And if you're born as a commoner, because of, you know, they're all governed by the karma. So what is karma? Karma works by dependent origination. It is not controlled by a god or a divine being. And the Buddha's job is only to discover karma. Like the Buddha is not an inventor. He cannot change the law of karma. The Buddha only explains how karma works and tell us how we can exhaust our karma by spiritual practice and at the end achieve enlightenment. I remember there was one time I was questioned by a practitioner of a religion, right? Of an Indian religion. And then they were asked, the priest was asking me, right? Oh, I learned about Buddhism, you know. He read about Buddhist texts, and then he mentioned to me that, how do you understand karma? I said, well, you know, this is how I understand karma. It's dependent origination, nobody controls it. And then he smiled and he asked me that, but you know what? But you know what? In our belief system, in their system, they say that karma itself was actually come from the God. And whichever name the God is, the God was the creator of the karma, because he was the one, the God was behind all the karma. And their main practice is to praise the God is to chant the name of the God so that the God will have mercy on them, and then they become one with the God, and then they can help them to eliminate their karma. So when he asked me where did karma came from, I said karma doesn't have a beginning or at the end. It all came from illusion, right? In a very delusion, in a very early stage of life. We didn't know what happened, but somehow, because of consciousness, we started to have actions of mind and body and speech, and that is all started. But for many religions with creator gods, they believe that gods are always behind the karma. So by praising the gods, they can help them to eliminate their karma. But Buddhism is the complete opposite of this system. We say that the Buddha never invented the karma. The karma is a law of nature. The karma existed even before the Big Bang. Well, the Big Bang is on Buddha's word, right? It's a modern word. So that's the idea. We only understand the law of karma and we understand how it works, and then we try to work this way to become enlightened, right? And also that is to say, for Buddhism, it is equal opportunity for nirvana, and especially in Therigatha. Therigatha is a verses of the elder monks, and Therigatha is a verses of the elder nuns. It says that there have many stories about monks and nuns from many different backgrounds who attain nirvana. So nirvana is not something just for certain group of people. Is equal for anyone, for you and me, for anyone. Yeah, for Sharon, for David, for Janice. You're welcome to join the Nirvana group. You'll become enlightened in the future. That's what the Buddha promises, right? Anyway, so for the Buddha, human status in a society is something that he was really against, because everyone should be equal. Okay, and how about the physical body, right? The Confucianism says that it's very clear, especially in the Xiao Jing, right? The classic of filial piety. It says that, Confucius says that our bodies, right, to every hair and a bit of skin, they all receive from our parents. So we must not presume to injure or wound them. This is the beginning of filial piety. So for the Confucius, taking care of our body, not to harm it and take good care of it, is the beginning of filial piety. Right? That's why protecting the body is filial piety. That is to pay respect to our parents. So that, if you look at our society now, that brings into the question of what happened when we pass away, burial or cremation. For a long time, the Chinese society, we didn't accept cremation, right? So now we understand why, right? Because the ancient Chinese, they prefer burial rather than cremation, because preserving the dead body was seen as a way to honor and respect one's parents. So this is a very Confucianist thinking, right? In ancient China, people love to bury the body, find a good spot in the best feng shui place, maybe in Singapore. I don't know whether that still exists. Pay $1 million, find a good spot. In the future, that will be your family burial, burial site, and that is a very ancient. That is a Confucius thinking, because burial is a way to preserve the body to the greatest extent, and that is a way to pay respect to one's parents. So this thought is actually, we may understand like, maybe we have our parents who still feel that I don't want to be cremated, in the future I want to be buried. So you ask them why. Sometimes we couldn't tell the reason, because it's so deep in our culture that sometimes we even forgot that burial means something so much to us. Is that it is a way to pay respect to our own parents who give us the body. So this is the understanding, because most of us have forgotten, and nowadays cremation is definitely the way to go. I mean everywhere, in the world, because of environment, and because of all reasons, like cremation is almost the way to go. And how about Buddhism? Simple. We talk about the five aggregates. We talk about the body and talk about a human, right? Buddhism, we talk about the five aggregates: material form, feeling, awe, sensation, perception, mental formation, consciousness. So when these five groups work together, like an engine, right? This is a human life. So body is just one part of the five aggregates. It's not the most important. It is important, but it is not the whole thing. We have sensation, perception, mental formation, and consciousness. All these come together, make us who we are as a human being. And more on that, from Buddhism, we always see the body only as an instrument, right? Buddhism sees the human body as a tool for developing a higher and nobler moral and spiritual life. The body helps us to practice so that we can elevate our spiritual practice to a higher level, right? And unlike Confucius, the Buddhists do not preserve the dead body, right? And because for Buddhist practice, cremation is very common. If you go to India, cremation is for Buddhists, and for many Indians, cremation is the only way to do, especially on the Ganges. You see people burning, the dead body. This is what they believe. The body, the ashes should go back to the nature. So, in Buddhist practice, cremation is not harming the body. This doesn't mean that, but of course, this doesn't mean that the Buddhists support harming the body, right? It's not important, so don't care. No, it's not. It's a tool that we should use. So the body must be protected when we are alive. Not after we are died. Not after we are dead, okay? you shouldn't take, after you are dead, forget about the body, right? Just do whatever you need to do. Either you donate it, for the medical purpose, so organ donation, it become also something that has been debated, among Buddhists, not only just Buddhists, but different religious settings. So should we do organ donation? This has been debated, among different schools. That some people nod their head. Some say, some schools of Buddhism will tell you that, how about 8 hours, period of not touching the body. But if you miss that 8 hours, the organs, there's no use for donating the organ. So in order to help us to encourage people to donate organ, we have to overcome the understanding of how Buddhists view life and death. I have explained about, from the Buddhist point of view, how Buddhists actually view death, the connection between the body and the mind. I think I did that in one of the classes before, so I won't mention here. But anyway, in general, right, in most Buddhist schools, we actually encourage organ donation and to donate our body for medical purpose, because there is something that we should do. And because Buddhist practice, the body is only useful when we are alive, not when we are dead. Okay? So because we have the body, one cannot cultivate virtue, and this is the only reason that we do take care of our body. Right, so for cremation, right, and many ancient, nowadays, what we call, is it called plant cremation? I'm not quite sure the name. In Chinese, it's called 植葬. 植 means planting, 葬 means burial, so plant burial, if I'm not mistaken. So what they do is, after cremation, we don't put in an urn, and occupy a space and put them forever for our family to take care of. Nowadays, especially in Taiwan, which is also being promulgated by Fa Gu San, Sheng Yuan Fa Shi was a pioneer in actually introducing this kind of 植葬, right? The plant burial. Means after we cremate our body, the ashes will be buried underground in the soil in different places. So you don't even know after a while where the ashes were being buried. So I read I read a report a while ago about Fakusan. This is one of the places in Fakusan where they do the ceremony. Already more than 5,000 people has done this ceremony in this patch of land alone. Imagine that 5,000 people, ashes, being buried here, and it's all gone back to the nature instead of occupying, a lot of spaces. Okay, so our physical body, in general, for Taoists and Confucianists, similar respect for the physical body. Taoists value the body more than fame. The Taoists say they do take care of the body, right? Got Tai Chi, so everything to practice until your body become one with the nature. So this is a Taoist. The Taoists aim to preserve the body for longevity. But for Buddhists, it's different. We believe in reincarnation. The body is like a cloth, right? It can be discarded and replaced. Every life we go through the next one, we always get a new body. So don't worry, you get recycled and you get a new one, right? This is a Buddhist belief. And physical body is less important since a new one can be taken after death. Of course, this is a little bit extreme. We don't say that it's not important. It's fine, don't take care of it, don't waste your money. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that if compared to mental practice, spiritual practice, the body is less important. So this is a little bit of this a comic I like. This I call the soul sorting center. Now, when you die, let's say you go to heaven, right? And somebody, some angel trying to figure, which belief system you have, who has a soul and who doesn't. All right, Buddhist, well, recyclable. The soul of Buddhist is recyclable. Hindu, yes, same, recyclable. Lutheran is a branch of, I think, Catholic. Okay, so non-recyclable, right? And Krishna, Krishna has a soul. So Krishna has a soul that go to paradise. Catholic, no, the soul just doesn't being recycled or doesn't go there, it just stay there. Agnostic, say flip a coin, right? Agnostic means that you cannot know whether God exists or not. They are always very ambiguous. They don't say anything for sure. So for them, whatever it is, fix a coin. It's just about how different religion view the soul and the body after we die. Okay. In conclusion, the Chinese tradition, religion, and Buddhism, we have a great integration of the three system. Buddhism, it should be a D, right? Taoism and Confucianism, right? It's a great integration. So, just a brief recap. Confucianism talks about cultivation of the person, aim to govern the nation and take social responsibility. Taoism, to emphasize on cultivation of the body, to preserve health and achieve longevity. And for Buddhism, it's about cultivation of the mind, aim to purify the mind from bad thoughts and develop wisdom. So these three actually complement each other, right? The three teachings complement each other in life philosophy, and people can choose the path that suits them best, right? In today's society. So together, actually, when we work together, actually, they can guide us to actively participate in social activities, which is very emphasized by Confucianism, and also we learn to train and preserve the health of the body and the nature, which is very much emphasized by Taoism. And then in spiritual practice, we want to transcend worldly gain and loss and to develop inner peace. That is the strong point of Buddhism. So, in short, as if we are Chinese, if we are living in Asian Chinese culture and are familiar with it, if you are not, it's something also to understand that we are always influenced by not just one religion belief. We are not influenced by only one culture. There's always a blend. There's always a kind of mix of different philosophical systems, ideas that come together that form what we understand should be to be our guidance in our spiritual practice. So, little homework for you. If you can spend probably 5 minutes, during the week, think to yourself, how can we bring together the wisdom of Confucianism and Taoism and Buddhism in the way you live each day? Think about one decision you make. try to differentiate. This is my decision, like the principle I'm holding here, is it based on Confucianism or Buddhism? This practice helps us to see how influenced they are in our daily life. But some of them, of course, they overlap. Many of them overlapping. Right? There are differences, there are similarities, but some, just one example, right? During we call it the Ulaanbaatar festival. It's going to happen this month or next month. Ulaanbaatar festival. We do write the disease, like especially for people, like for family members who pass away, and then we do the we chant the sutra, we do offering, we do marry for them. Actually, are these really Buddhist rituals? It wasn't done during the Buddha's time, right? It is very Asian culture. But we do it and then we give them a new meaning based on Buddhist practice. So when we are going to Ulaanbaatar practice, when we are giving offering, so we are practicing Buddhism and Confucianism, even Taoism at the same time. So think about all the activities and all the decisions we make each day. How much are we being influenced, and what we hold to be the truth that we believe in making any decision. Something that might have a different perspective. All right. So that's all I have to share today. Let's see. So Sharon, is anything I should take care of? I know you gave me, you sent me a message 15 minutes ago telling me I got 15 minutes.
Yeah. Okay, maybe just one question. So,
Yeah.
like, is Confucianism closely related to Wu Jie?
Sorry again. Confusion related to what? To Wu Jie.
Is it closely related to Wu Jie?
Confucianism is more on what to do, actually. Of course, you can link them, the not killing. Yeah, I think I saw one before, how they link the practice of Confucianism to the practice of the five precepts, right? Yeah, definitely. I think you can link to them, but if you want, Eddie, yeah, if you want, you can go to Google search, pick up what are the moral values in Confucianism, and then you compare with Wu Jie and try to match out. Of course, they might not match perfectly well, but they are somehow covered by each other. I would say you can find some matches, but they are not directly related since they are still two different systems. But we have to understand that the most fundamental principles in the five precepts is do not harm. Okay? Do not harm. So this is the most fundamental principles, even though we have five precepts, but they all based on only three words. Do no harm. Right? I believe Confucianism is the same, to be more harmony with the society, with oneself. So with that principle, and then you try to see their there are more details of the practice, whether they can match with each other. I see that you can try and do that. Okay, Sharon, I think I should end. Any questions? You can send me. Make a copy. I should touch on that maybe in the beginning next class. Yeah, next class, the same time, same venue in Zoom. So let's do a very quick reflect on what we have talked about today. So come back to our body, feel our breathing. First, take a deep breath. Slowly breathe out. Today, we have spent our precious time gathered here together with all other good-hearted people, We were listening to talks on Buddhism, on the different aspects of Buddhism when it was countering different culture, how Buddhism was being elaborated, how Buddhism was being integrated with different cultures. With this understanding, we hoped to be able to gain a more open mind. We hope that we will be more acceptance to other belief systems, and most important, we understand ourselves better, understand where we come from, understand what Buddhism means to us as a society, given our cultural background. If we are from different cultural background, it is also a good chance for us to understand different cultures and to make reflection on our own. Because as a Buddha always said, no Dhamma stands alone. Everything in the world is interconnected, no matter how small they are. We are who we are because of all these different karma, and by understanding and learning more about other different dhammas, other understanding, other theories, other philosophies, we will become much better and more acceptance to whatever challenges we face in daily life. Before we end, we'd like to dedicate whatever merit we have accumulated today to ourselves, to our family, to our friends, to the people around us, to the whole society. May we all gain a little bit more patient. May we all gain a little bit more calmness. And may we all gain a little bit more compassion and wisdom. Thank you everyone for your time, and see you next week.